السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, the Asharis and the Maturidis, who are they and what do they believe? These are two sects from the sect of Islam that are very well known historically and today as well. The Ashari sect, they ascribe to a man by the name of Br.Ehsan Ali ibn Ismail al-Ashari rahimahullah ta'ala. Br.Ehsan al-Ashari, he was born in Basra in Iraq. He was born around the 260 after the Hijrah, and he died around by 324 Hijri rahimahullah. As he was growing up, he grew up for 40 years upon the belief of the Mu'tazila. He believed in the creed of the Mu'tazila. And the Mu'tazila were a group of people who preferred their reasoning over the text of the Quran and the Sunnah when it came to theological matters. And they had other beliefs as well. Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari for 40 years was upon al-i'tizal, he was upon the creed of the Mu'tazila. After that, he adopted the belief that was propagated by Muhammad ibn Sa'id al-Kullab. And that was a mixture of Sunni orthodoxy, but likewise ilm al-kalam, or theological sophistry, if you would. Now, Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari was known to refute the Mu'tazila after he was with them. So the first phase of his life was al-i'tizal with the Mu'tazila. The second stage of his life, you could say, was with Muhammad ibn Sa'id al-Kullab, or the Kullabi phase, if you would. And then the third phase of his life, it is mentioned that he returned to the general understanding of the creed of the Salaf rahimahumullah ta'ala. Now, many Ash'aris perhaps will not agree with this. They will of course dispute this, and they will say no, he only had the Mu'tazili phase and then he adopted the Aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. However, we argue otherwise. This is not the place to argue that. However, when one reads the books of Tariq and he reads the works of this theologian, this Mutakallim, Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari rahimahullah, you will find that his development throughout the ages and that which he died upon in terms of his last qawl and opinion, then it was a general acceptance of what the Salaf rahimahumullah ta'ala were upon. Now, the school of Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari developed after him. Okay, it developed after his passing. So we have within the Ash'ari madrasa, we have a few phases as well, since they are not all the same. And of course this is something else which they will dispute as well, that no, all the Ash'ari are the same, but clearly they're not. They didn't believe in the exact same thing. Their approach and their methodologies were not exactly carbon copy of the previous scholars. In fact, you will find later Ash'ari scholars opposing what Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari rahimahullah was upon. And even some Ash'ari professors and scholars, they profess that, and they will tell you that as well, those who are truthful from amongst them. But nonetheless, the first group of scholars from the Asha'ira were the likes of al-Baqillani, Ibn Furak, al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah ta'ala. These scholars and these theologians, these mutakallimin, they were known to expand upon the belief of Br.Ehsan al-Ash'ari in regards to the affairs of ad-Din, when it comes especially to the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and other branches of Aqeedah. In the case of al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah, he was more traditional than the aforementioned Baqillani and Ibn Furak, since his reliance upon hadith was far greater. So they would believe in the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, they would make ta'wil in many issues regarding the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, especially in regards to the sifat al-ikhtiyariya lillah azza wa jal, the attributes of action. Al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah and others, they would make ta'wil of them. But just to mention a set of beliefs of the Asha'ira, especially the ones who came later, because you had a second phase, the phase of al-Juwayni and al-Ghazali, and the people in that time period, and then afterwards you had as-Sunusi and those who came later on. Taba'an al-Razi was from the mid-period of the Ash'ari timeline, if you would, al-Razi and all these other al-Iji and the likes. We won't go into detail about their methodologies, since when you read their works you will find that there are many differences as well. But this is like a timeline of the Ashari, from the early ones to the later ones, from their beliefs that we read in their books that oppose the Aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is their mukhalafa, their opposition to the concept of Tawheed al-Ibadah. Because they all, especially the later ones, they define Tawheed al-Ibadah to basically mean al-Rububiyyah, Lordship. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has the qudra, the ability to create. So they believe that the ilah, the God, or the one who is to be worshipped, is the one who has the ability to create. Al-qudra ala al-ikhtira'. This is what they believe that Tawheed is. If you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is able to create everything out of nothingness, then this is what Tawheed is in its essence. So they neglect the aspect of ibadah. So ad-du'a, al-dhabh li ghayrillah, etc., etc. These acts of worship, if they are pointed towards, or if they are directed towards a being, and you believe that being has the ability to create, then it's shirk. Otherwise, no. So they have khalal, they have a deficiency in the understanding of Tawheed al-Ibadah. In regards to the belief of Iman, they are like the Murji'ah, because they don't believe that actions are from Iman. They believe that Iman is statement upon the tongue and belief in the heart. As for actions, then it's not from the pillars of Iman, it's not from the musamma of Iman, it's not from the definition of al-Iman. And of course, the belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there is ijma' that Iman is qawl wa amal wa i'tiqad. The belief of the heart, the statement of the tongue, and the actions upon one's limbs, these are what Iman is. These are the components of Iman. So there is ijma' from the Salaf. When you read the works of the Salaf, there is a consensus that Iman is comprised of three things. And from them is action, which the Ashari do not believe. Likewise, from their beliefs, the Ashari is the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not above His creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not above the Arsh. So when the Ashari, they say we believe Allah is above the Arsh, and they don't, because the early Ashari never made tasrih like this, especially those from the time of Razi and others. They never made it clear that we believe Allah is above the Arsh. Today they like to misguide the Muslims by saying yes, we believe Allah is above the Arsh as well, but their understanding or meaning to that is in status or power or glory or whatever have you. So they disbelieve, they do not believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He Himself by His essence is over the Arsh. And the belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that Allah Azza wa Jal Himself is above the throne, Jalla wa Ala, above the seven heavens. And the Ashari, they negate this. They don't believe this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since that would mean that He is contained within a direction and He's in a place. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far beyond time and space, and so on and so forth. This is their reasoning. So they have somewhat of the truth, but they intend by a falsehood, and the natija, the result is falsehood. So they don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the throne. And they base this upon ilm al-kalam, theological sophistry. So they will use this human reasoning, which in its essence was adopted from the Greeks, the disbelieving Greeks, philosophers. So they use that mechanism in denying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the Arsh. So they use that type of logic and reasoning, which is not found in the works of the Salaf rahimahumullah ta'ala. If you read all the works of the Salaf in Aqeedah and I'tiqad, you will not find this type of language. Only within those who were muta'athirin, they were affected by the way of the mutakallimin. So they don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the Arsh, and Allah says Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, the most merciful rose over the throne. So they will take the attribute of istiwa and they will reinterpret it. They will say, well, this means this and that means that. And likewise with the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will either make tafweed or ta'weel. They will say, well, we don't know the meaning, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the meaning. And as for this attribute, then it could possibly mean this, it could possibly mean that. The hand of Allah might mean His power, or His bounty, or His virtue, etc., etc. So they believe in these concepts of ta'weel and tafweed, which is not the belief of the Salaf rahimahumullah ta'ala. Likewise, when it comes to the Quran, the book of Allah, they do not actually believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke the Quran with the Arabic letters, nor sound. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say with the letters, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. They don't believe in that, because letters and sound and the Arabic language is created. They believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an inner speech that resides in Him, yani kalam nafsi, that is of no sounds or letters. And that what we have today, the Quran that we have today, the Arabic within it, this is an ibara, an expression of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, rather than His actual word verbatim. But of course, Ahlul Sunnah don't believe that. We believe that the Quran is the actual word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah spoke the words Alif Lam Mim, Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. Allah Jalla wa Ala spoke this Quran with letters and sounds in a manner that befits His Majesty subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam heard that from Allah and revealed that to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Likewise, when it comes to other aspects of Aqidah, such as the seeing of Allah Jalla wa Ala, they believe that we will see Allah but without a direction. So they add this clause to it in order to preserve their theological mechanism, which of course is faulty since it was adopted by the disbelieving Greeks. So they have these type of beliefs that oppose the belief of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In regards to the Maturidiyah, then the reason as to why I haven't explained regarding them in more depth is because they resemble the Ashari and they are very close to them in their beliefs. Everything I've mentioned, this is what the Maturidiyah believe as well. Of course, the Maturidiyah, they are a sect and group that ascribe to Muhammad ibn Mahmud al-Maturidi. He was born in Samarkand and he died in around year 333 after the Hijrah. We don't know much about his life. The Masadir and the sources are, very scarce in regards to mentioning him and, when he was born, his upbringing, his teachers, etc., etc. And Abu Hasan Ashari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, they were not muhaddithin, so you won't find their names like that in the chains of narration in hadith. You won't find them. They were not people who engaged in narrating of hadith. They were more with regards to debating and ilm al-kalam and aqidah and debating the Malahida and the Mu'tazila, because both of them, the Abu Hasan Ashari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, they would refute the Mu'tazila and their deviant beliefs, all the while trying to prove their beliefs, thinking that this was the belief of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but of course it's not. And there are certain differences between the Ashari and the Maturidiyah. For example, the Maturidiyah, they believe in the Sifat al-Takween, which is a different or an extra attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So 8 in total as opposed to the 7 that the Ashari believe in. And by the way, they will say to you, well, we don't just believe in 7, we believe more than 7, but in fact the other attributes that they supposedly claim return back to the 7. Ala kulli hal, these are topics and discussions that is not for this video. Nonetheless, they have slight differences to the Ash'ari when it comes to creed as well, but not anything major in their words that would declare each of them to be deviated. But of course, if there is only one saved sect and there's only one aqidah to be agreed upon and followed and believed in, then I don't know why that there are 2 Asharis and Maturidis, as if both of them are fine and okay. There should in fact be one if they all believe in the same thing. However, that is not the case. And you'll find scholarship throughout history condemning the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyah in terms of their beliefs. You will find scholars who do condemn them and declare them to be innovators, despite whoever ascribes to them. And that does not mean that everybody who ascribes or was affected by the beliefs of the Ash'ari and Maturidiyah are innovators. There were scholars who were great ulama and scholars who were affected by their speech. And bidhnillahi ta'ala, the good and the intentions that they had in making munasara, aiding the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, supersedes their mistakes. And with that, we end here. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.